It's a beautiful bacon day, Cookie Crusaders. Today we're coming to talk about topping upgrades. Now, as most of you know, toppings themselves are pretty difficult to acquire. They're a little bit difficult to upgrade sometimes between the cost from the coins, the topping pieces that you have to grind out, just sometimes not even getting the topping itself. So it can be difficult. So a few things I want to go over is just what I look at when I'm looking at toppings and what I'm considering when I'm going to upgrade them and what makes it a worthy upgrade. So let me go over some of that with you. And I'll go over some pre-existings and then also some newer ones that I haven't used the marking system, which if you haven't noticed before or you haven't used it before, the marking system is here. I'll explain why I use the marking system. Well, actually, I'll just explain that now. The biggest reason is because if you go to break down something and it has a mark on it, it cannot be broken down until you specifically remove the mark. So if for any reason you were to accidentally have a level 12 topping unequipped and unmarked and doesn't belong to anybody, that could be broken down on accident. Definitely can happen. If it's equipped to someone, you can't break it down regardless if it's marked or not. So that's the only protection there. But maybe you just have a bunch of level 12 toppings that you haven't moved around. So it's good to mark them for the sake of just not accidentally breaking them down. It is a little time consuming, of course, but it's really good if you want to come back later and go, I don't want that anymore. Or, wow, I need to access these specific toppings. And you can do this in a different fashion. You can do it for only like specific substats that you really want to mark, and those are the things you care about the most. That's fine. I do it for every substat, just so that way I have a full broad spectrum of the possible combinations and what is like, that's a strong topping. So some of these may look silly for that reason, but yet again, I'll explain. So let's go to this one, for instance. So this is a Mark III. Now, a Mark III, anything at Mark III and above is a keep, even if it's not necessarily stats that I'm going to use right away. Mark III and Mark IV, they're the best of the best that I'm able to produce in that upgrade session, and they can be useful down the road. So, what made this one a Mark III? Well, as you can see, it's an attack speed of 2.1, a critical resist of 3.8, and a defense of 2.3. If we go here, we see that the attack speed can be the absolute highest of 3%. We see the critical resist can be the highest of 4%, and the other one was defense. Defense can be the highest of 3%. So, with that knowledge, we are almost at the max points of two of those metrics, which is attack, speed, and defense. And we're almost completely maxed on critical resist. Now, critical resist, yet again, that might just not be a substat you care about, so you might mark this differently for that reason. But I'm taking the averages here. So on average, two of those three substats fall in the Mark III percentages. And I have like a guide that I'm going to put in the description of what I determine is Mark I, Mark II, or Mark III. And so that way you guys can think, okay, well that's what looks best for this. That's what looks best for this. So hopefully that can help you. But I'll try to explain it here as well. So attack speed 2.1. Under what I've deemed to be Mark III, that falls under that. Defense of 2.3. Same thing under that. That falls in Mark III. So those are guaranteed Mark III stats anyway. And the crit resist is a Mark IV. This could technically be considered a low Mark IV topping, but it's got 2 in the Mark III section. And so for that reason, I just didn't want to assign it too high because I don't want to assign this to a cookie first before a Mark IV topping. So let me show you Mark 4 topping. So this one, critical of 2.9%, HP of 1.6, and damage resist of 5.3. So critical, 3% the highest, HP, 3% the highest, damage resist, 6% the highest. So we've got two of them that are almost maxed. Damage resist, 0.7 can go higher. Critical can go 0.01 higher. And then the HP could be better. So if HP was better, this would be a guaranteed top tier topping. But it has 2 in the high tiers, and the HP is still within Mark 2. If the HP was below 1.5%, then I would have to actually downgrade this to a Mark 3 because it would have such a low pulling stat that it averages out lower. Yes, damage resistance is amazing. The crit is almost maxed out on this. That makes it really good. But in a fair system, I want to average it correctly, so that way I'm not banking on specific toppings for specific cookies to be the most powerful just based on my marking system. Because the more toppings you get, the harder it is going to be to shift around toppings, unless you're just like, I need damage resist and cooldown and I care about nothing else, and then you just only go find the best toppings with those stats. That is a way to do it, but over time you're going to want to refine it even better, especially when it comes to fine-tuning the skills of the cookies. You want to have like 3 specific substats you're going for, and you'll have to find those on each topping, and that can be much harder, much more grinding, much more resource management. Let me show you a tier 2 though. Let's go with a decent one that has maybe some good stats in other spots. Let's go look at different toppings. Yeah, we'll look at tier 2 Searing topping. No, not that one. We'll do, oh, this is a good one. Okay, so Cooldown, 1.4%. That is, in my guide, a Mark 2 stat. Defense of 1.3, same thing, Mark 2. And then the debuff resist, that is almost maximum, because you can get the highest of 2%. So that's technically a Mark 4. But 2 out of the 3 substats are Mark 2. And debuff resist is not a good enough reason to upgrade it, because it's not pulling enough weight for what the topping could be. And so for that reason, that has to be a Mark 2. If it was a 2% cooldown and a 1.9% debuff resist, that would automatically make this a Mark 4, just for that reason. So it's very easy to shift around when it comes to these substats, but that's the RNG of things. So I'm going to go with some unmarked ones and show you the thought process there of how I'm going to mark them, because I am actually going to go through and mark some that I haven't caught up with. Oh, and actually, really importantly, when it comes to these toppings in the marking system, this is the biggest reason I use this. If I haven't marked it yet, and it falls under a Mark 1 for any reason, I don't upgrade it anymore. I won't upgrade the topping any further unless I really, really feel that there's a strong possibility of that topping getting amazing stats, and I just have like a lot of topping pieces to burn, but the RNG is just so much that it's not usually worth it. If it's a Mark 2, I will be much closer to wanting to upgrade it, but yet again, I'll be iffy. I won't necessarily be ready to upgrade right away. It just depends on how much I have and what I'm working with. Now, if it's a Mark 3, I am upgrading it, but I will only upgrade it to a level 9, and then I reassess. Because if it's at level 9 and it went down in an average, because I will re-average with the 2 stats at that point, then I'll stop. If it's still looking good, and it's either still in the same class or better, upgrade it. No problem. So for this one, for instance, critical is 3% max. This is at 2.4. On my chart of what seemed fair, anything from 2.5 to 3% would be Mark 4. So this falls under Mark 3. If we look at this one, I didn't follow the rules on this one because that was before I was doing my system. So this one 100% falls under Mark 1, and I won't be upgrading that one any further. This one right here, attack speed of 2.2, that falls under Mark 3. This one is an attack speed of 1.6. That is at the low end of Mark 2, but it's still Mark 2. This one is a defense of 2.1. That will fall under the Mark 3. It's close to the lower side though, but it does fall under Mark 3. This is a defense of 2%, still within the Mark 3 territory. HP of 2.8, that is a Mark 4, as 3 is the max. HP of 2.7, another Mark 4. And these can downgrade, remember. If I go to upgrade them, and the next one is like 1% of anything, 1% attack, 1% cooldown, 1% HP, that right there, the average between the Mark 4 and the Mark 1, either goes to a low 3 or a high 2. And it's debatable of whether it's upgradable at that point. So HP of 1.3%, this is a Mark 1. Shouldn't really go with that one any further. Attack speed of 1.6, this is a Mark 2. Attack speed of 1.1, 100% Mark 1. Critical 2.4, that's good. That is a Mark 3, just barely right under the Mark 4 stats. Debuff resist, even though it's not a stat you'll probably think about much until I find bigger reasons for debuff to be looked at. But it is at the almost maximum, so it is a Mark 4 in technicalities. Attack speed of 2%, that's going to be a Mark 3. Only a few more. 2.9% crit, that is almost maximum. That's going to be a Mark 4. Attack speed of 1.7%, that is going to be a Mark 2. At the edge of it, too. If it had been a little bit higher, would have been a Mark 3. Crit of 2.7, that is a Mark 4. And then this one, we'll go ahead and we'll just upgrade just enough to see what it gets to. HP of 2%. So 2% HP, that is a Mark 3. And so you can see, if I filter it only to Mark 4s, that's how I've done it to build out the system. I don't have a lot of Mark 4s, but I do have a lot of Mark 3s. Quite a good amount. And I think still a decent amount of Mark 2s that I'm working to get upgraded, but I'm just not at that point yet. Because it's hard. The substats are pretty hard to get right on those. And I've not really found a way to micromanage the process to make it where you get guaranteed good stats. If anyone finds that, please comment, please let us know, so that way everyone can know. That's what this channel is about, is informing everybody. So we want people to understand. Like I said, I'm going to leave a nice guide in the description of this video so that you have the details without it being confusing, hopefully. If it is confusing, definitely leave a comment. I'm more than willing to explain it further. But I'm going to leave that in the description as the guide, so that way you can come back to it and look like, okay, and this is how we mark the system. It's not that you need to do this. It is not that it is, a perfect system. It could probably be arranged even better, but I gave fair values to all the toppings in concordance to how much percent variance they had, and that way you can have a more robust system to think, okay, this is a strong topping. This should be helpful to these cookies. Yet again, you're not going for all the substats. I understand that a lot of people are going for attack, damage resist, cooldown. We're looking into further substats. We're looking into more builds. So be willing to keep other toppings that have high Mark 3, Mark 4 stats, because the return on investment of breaking down a topping that you've upgraded, even if it's a stat you think you'll never use, you don't get a lot back. I mean, heck, I'll show you right now. So it is, let's see, let's take an unupgraded Searing Raspberry. We will upgrade it just to level 6 if we have enough. If we don't, we'll break down some of the commons that we have. Filter. Still don't think that'll be enough, but that's okay. Okay, so that took almost over 40 toppings. We'll just say that. And if we go find a level 6, that is, well, actually, we'll look at all, but we'll go to the Mark 1s that we know we want to break down. Let's go with this one. So if we hit breakdown, we have to remove the mark so that we're allowed to break it down. And we'll get 10 topping pieces back. We put 40, or potentially more, into it. I think if you don't fail at all, maybe 35. So 35 at the absolute best. Anywhere between 40 to 45 if you're having really bad luck, to get 10 back. And you don't get the coins back. Still going to do it anyway because we know we're not going to continue with that. But you don't get the coins back. And you don't get much of any of the toppings pieces back. So this is why this guide should be helpful, so that you don't have to waste resources and feel that you're falling behind the game when it comes to toppings, since that makes a huge difference in cookie battles and team building. Thank you so much for stopping by. Please do leave any comments or opinions in for everyone to see. I'm happy to look at it, happy to answer any questions, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you.